Hey everybody, hope you like my new hat. So, I have a really important video to share. This is going to be really good. There's so many happenings going on in 2023. It's just reaching a crescendo. So many events are lining up to make the perfect storm for a paradigm shift. So let me explain. Right, it's weird. Right when I came up with the idea for this title, my 2023 prediction, the year of the white rabbit, I notice Elon Musk tweets this: follow the white rabbit. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'm going in the right direction. That's what God's telling me. So, skipping ahead, what do I mean by this? There are three separate events that are about to occur in 2023, and if any one of those three manifests into fruition, it will completely change the dynamic of our entire country. Because all three of these events are things that the mainstream media literally can't hide. It's like too in the open for them to possibly do anything. It's amazing. Event number one would be the DeSantis Roundtable. So DeSantis is going DEFCON 3 on the pharmaceutical industry. He's got together a bunch of doctors and top surgeon generals and a bunch of people that have been injured by the recent you know what, and they were giving their testimonials along with doctors saying, like, look, something has to be done. Like, obviously these things were not what they were advertised as. So maybe you've heard of the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. This was started during the Reagan administration because all these pharmaceutical companies were like, hey, we distribute millions of vaccines, and every once in a while there's, a bad egg or people have a bad reaction. We can't be getting sued every time this happens. Can we please get blanket immunity? And the Reagan admin is like, okay, fine, I'll grant you this blanket immunity, but in return, we need to set up something called VAERS. VAERS is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. They're like, okay, if you no longer have any liability, we got to have some sort of database that tracks anybody that happens to get injured by a vaccine. And the crazy thing that happened during this pandemic, where people were posting the VAERS data, and the mainstream media and even mainstream public health officials brushed it off like a kooky anti-vax conspiracy theory, when this was literally the government collecting this data on the vaccine injured from the Reagan admin. Like, it's unreal. Like the strange hypnosis people were under during this time. So there's also just a lot of cases that people can't ignore anymore. For example, Maddie DeGaray, she was injured immediately after the second shot she got from Pfizer. And her mother and her are appearing in front of all these courts and judges, and they're getting some nationwide attention. And there's a lot of people like this. I mean, we're getting to a point where there's all these mothers crying over their injured children. And it's like, you can't ignore that. It's like all coming to a head. So event number two, Russia. The mainstream media is not accurately reporting Russia. For example, Bakhmut. The Ukrainian government seems to have some sort of sunken cost fallacy when it comes to this city. They just keep pumping more and more soldiers into this area, and they're just getting devastated by Russian artillery fire. That's what all the major analysts are saying. We got this person here on the ground in Ukraine saying, meanwhile, Russia responds by sweeping Bakhmut off the earth with artillery in the night. And the Russians, Colonel Doug McGregor said this recently. He worked under the Bush admin. He said the Russians didn't intend for Ukraine to be this dumb, as in they just keep bringing soldiers into counteroffenses against them, and they're getting slaughtered in order to have some sort of good PR to show that Ukraine still has fighting spirit. And they're doing this sunken cost fallacy where they keep bringing more and more soldiers into Bakhmut, which isn't even that strategic of a location, and they're just getting annihilated by artillery fire. And I was listening to this one medic on the ground who said 90% of the people he treats are from just artillery shells. It's just a complete meat grinder there. And the casualty figures I'm hearing from the Ukrainian forces are astronomical. It's not looking good for them. And we've just been inundated with this idea that, Russia's doing terribly and Ukraine's going to win. When people suddenly see whoa, Russia just redrew the lines on the map and took over Kiev. What's going on? Washington Post told me they were losing. That's going to be a potentially big red pill for people. Yeah, Bakhmut again. This is the Telegraph. Inside Bakhmut, the strange and senseless death trap draining Ukraine's tired army. Like I said, Colonel McGregor said it just makes no sense what they're doing. All right, another little thing here. This isn't one of the events, but this book was recently published by Whitney Webb, which documented the United States government's connection with all these different crime syndicates. And every major ethnicity has a crime, like a mafia, from the Italians to like the Japanese to the Irish to the Hungarians to the ones I can't say. Everybody has one. So, and this is a very credible book, like backed up by sources and cited, very cut and dry. And I just saw this on like Jimmy Dore, some like liberal YouTube channel, discussing it just very plainly. And it's like, wow, that's kind of a paradigm shift. That's something we haven't really been able to talk about. And then Ye, I can't say I agree with everything he says, but I mean, at least he's getting people to think outside the box, outside of their limited scope of beliefs. And that's always a good thing, to just break this matrix mind control system. That's what he's doing. He's just shaking the monkey cage. And I like that. So, event number 3, Kari Lake. Kari Lake is running to be the governor of Arizona. She lost by a very thin margin. The issue here is 300,000 new votes were found by some whistleblowers. And this is a Zoom meeting she had with her opponent, Katie Hobbs' lawyers here, and where the judge in this Zoom meeting said that Kari Lake would like to proceed in the court hearing to recount the election. And right when he announced this, Katie Hobbs' lawyers looked visibly distraught. Please check out the video yourself. They have the worst poker face. They were just like hiding their mouth, like looking around, sweating, because they know this is big. How is the mainstream media going to cover up the fact that Katie Hobbs is going to step down and Kari Lake will be the governor of Arizona? You physically can't hide that information. And if this were to hypothetically work in Lake's favor, this would completely open up the floodgates to be able to question every single United States election. Like this is monumental if this passes. Like the implications are enormous. So, besides those 3 events, there's just been like gaslighting, like everywhere. It's just reaching a crescendo. When you look up the Great Reset, you'll find 2 things. You'll see articles on, the spread of the Great Reset conspiracy. And then you'll see literally a link to the World Economic Forum talking about the Great Reset and what they plan to do. This will really drive it home here. So here's a YouTube video for the World Government Summit. And, it says, are we ready for a new world order? And it's them discussing this, like these high profile individuals from Saudi Arabia to the United States. And then there's a little context here from Wikipedia. The New World Order is a conspiracy theory, which is about the emerging totalitarian world government. And it's like, well, but that's what they're discussing. Like, it's just getting silly. So another thing here, just like the vaccine in general, like we're in the information age. Look back in May when they said, it has 95% protection. Then in June, 70%. July, 50% protection. Actually, it has no protection, but reduces the spread. It doesn't reduce the spread, but it reduces the severity. Well, it doesn't reduce the severity, but it reduces hospitalizations. Where everybody's looking around and be like, wow, this was just BS, wasn't it? You're just like covering your tracks. Like, was this negligence or what? What's going on here? We can like literally point to A, B, and C using the internet. Like, you guys completely dropped the ball here. So this is just a funny little one. Like, for example, NBC, when they try to fact check something, like, the claim Trump says Clinton acid washed her email server, but the truth is Clinton's team used an app called BleachBit. She didn't use a corrosive chemical. You've been fact checked. It's like, okay, dude. It's the old news, but it's stupid. Another thing I want to bring up, Joe Biden. He's been saying a lot of truth bombs recently. He is really, I think, losing his ego because he's losing his mind. The other day he said, anyone who criticizes surgeons who perform transgender surgeries is responsible for racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, because it's all connected. That's like a really wise thing to say. I'm going to start calling him Guru Biden. I might actually vote for the guy because we're finally going to get our spiritual, egoless leader that I've personally wanted for a very long time. Like, when you start to lose your mind in this fashion, you just start sputtering the truth, like left and right, like a demented old person or a little kid. He's turning into a child. He's looking at the world through the eyes of an innocent child at this point. And I'm not joking. Like, that's literally happening to him. So yeah, I'll be calling him Guru Biden from now on. He is my spiritual leader. I'm not joking. Another thing, the Washington Post recently let off a bunch of people because they lost 500,000 subscribers in the past year. Like, that's crazy. People are no longer looking at the mainstream media because they're hungry for truth. Maybe that's why people aren't going to church as often anymore, because the churches stopped telling the truth too. We're at this stage right now where the curtain is being lifted and we can see the Wizard of Oz. And that's really going to highlight the year of the rabbit, I feel. Because like I said, if any one of those three things manifests into fruition, it'll completely change the paradigm of this country. And, you know, in China, in the Chinese zodiac, the year of the rabbit is like the year of diplomacy. So I could see a lot of people, you know, walking over to the other side of the aisle and being like, oh, you know what? These skeptics of the narrative, maybe they're not so kooky after all. I think I get what they're saying. I mean, granted, the people on the two polar opposite extremes, they're going to be going like harder than ever. It's just going to get more extreme. Excuse me. But I think that the average like majority will start to shift. So yeah, that's what I see.